You know what time it is. Today is Wednesday, which means we are continuing 1 year later, the show where we talk about prospects who were taken in last year's NHL Draft and talk about their stories from then until now. Today we are filling in the top of the draft as we finally go over the final top 5 pick out of all the guys that we need to complete this set. We're heading over to the second overall guy, and he's a player whose name was definitely not supposed to go there in the eyes of many scouts and analysts heading into the draft. Today we are talking about the second overall New Jersey Devils pick Simon Nemec, as he and his brother Juraj Slafkovsky set history as being the first ever 2 Slovaks taken in the 1 and 2 spots in the NHL Draft. Now, there are a bunch of other stats and cool facts that you could attribute to these two being Slovaks taken at number 1 and number 2. Add to that Filip Mesar taken towards the end of the first round. It was a pretty legendary draft for Slovakia, all things considered. But Simon Nemec, as we had talked about in the title and the beginning of the video, was not supposed to go this high. He's a right-handed defenseman, 6'1", 190 pounds, 19 years old as of right now, from Slovakia, and his projected draft ranking was a bit further down. Craig Button had him at number 5, but McKeon's Bob McKenzie and Future Considerations had him at number 4. Elite Prospects went so far as to having him at number 6. Lo and behold, when it comes to the guys at the top of the draft, everybody had this idea that Slafkovsky or Wright or Cooley would be 1, 2, 3 in some sort of order, and then you had the other guys. Jiricek, Nemec, 2 defensemen, you had other wingers like Cutter Gauthier entering the mix, but when it came to Simon Nemec, the fact that he went second overall above Cooley and above Wright was due to one very particular reason. The New Jersey Devils didn't really need any of those 2 guys. You see, they had drafted first overall in 2017 and 2019, taking Nico Hischier as well as Jack Hughes. The last thing the Devils need was a projected first-line center in one of Cooley or Wright. Add to this the idea that their defense core actually looks pretty good in the long-term future. You've got Luke Hughes, you had Shakir Mukhamadullin, but you traded him away, and there were other younger D-men who projected to being good too. But most of these guys were left-handed. Simon Nemec is right. At the end of the day, Simon Nemec, while being a good talent, was a player that directly addressed a need the Devils had. Sure, you could say it's kind of ludicrous taking him above Wright or Cooley, but that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. If there was any team that had the luxury of passing up on a guy like Wright or Cooley, New Jersey was definitely high up on that list. So while the drafting of Nemec at second in itself was not really projected, it's understandable considering the context. Now, if you go over to Nemec and what he was back when he was taken in the draft, he was playing at a Nitra in the Slovak League, where he was under a point per game as a defenseman. 26 points, 39 games played, also was a point per game for the team in the playoffs with 17 points in 19 games. He had suited up for Team Slovakia at the Olympics and the World Championships, where in the latter he was an under point per game defenseman once more, and if you take a look at the scouting report, Nemec consistently puts himself in the right positions to create. He sprints up the ice in all situations, activates from the point, moves upon pass receptions, and tries the odd complex give-and-go activation play. There are moments of creativity with the puck, like delaying and passing cross-ice for a clean breakout or a fake shot, becoming a pass just as the puck leaves his stick. He pinches at the right times, and has the reactionary skill to evade pressure and maintain the zone. Nemec was a beast, just an offensive creator who had a really nice fluidity to the way he moved around in the offensive zone. And by the way, quick aside, I'm just noticing this right now, but on Elite Prospects, if you go to Nemec's page and you scroll down into the video section, you could actually see the Why I Want video we made about him included with all the other analyses done. So thank you, Elite Prospects, for validating my perspective and prospect reports on your own website. That makes the imposter syndrome feel a little bit better. But Simon Nemec was a very good player, and if you go over to Dauber, they also said that he has a top-pairing defender ceiling, especially given his tremendous skating, puck skills, and vision. This report, actually written by Hattie K, is inaccurate because it does project him to returning to Nitra for another year. However, he actually ended up making the AHL's Utica Comets, and he played the entire 22-23 as a member in the AHL. There, for the Devils farm team, he had 34 points in 65 games played, definitely not bad for an 18-year-old defender in the AHL, and he was under a point per game for the team in the postseason. Not to mention his captaining stint for Team Slovakia at the World Juniors, where he was a point per game there, and a second stint with Team Slovakia at the World Championships. For all intents and purposes, Simon Nemec proved to everybody that his second overall standing was no fluke, that this guy is already capable enough to have a significant role in the American Hockey League at just 18 years old as a right-handed D-man. Now, of course, a season like this doesn't immediately scream, hey, this guy should belong in the NHL, he shouldn't be playing AHL hockey. This season is a really good stepping stone, and if you wanted to say, hey, you could give him another year in the AHL, that's totally fine. This certainly is a player that has a lot of growth to do, especially with the style of play that he has. He's not a Cale Makar activation-level offensive defenseman. He is not a Quinn Hughes cerebral type of cowboy. He's kind of a unique, slippery mix of the two. It's difficult to describe. Add to this the two-way dynamism in his game, and you have yourselves a prospect that has top-pairing potential. He really does. And when you think about Luke Hughes also having top-line potential, this pairing, if it ever manifests in the future, Hughes and Nemec could be one of the best defense pairings in the entire NHL. But we may not see that particularly this year. Here's an article on the Hockey News written by Tony Ferrari from August 7th, the 2023-24 prospect pool overview for the Devils. If you scroll over to the Simon Nemec write-up, he's a right-handed defender who could very well have stardom in the future. He should find his way into the NHL at some point at this upcoming season, even if it's just for a cup of coffee to fill in for an injury. He's a very good skater who moves the puck at a high level. Whether on the breakout or in the offensive zone, Nemec's passes are crisp and clean. His defensive game is still a work in progress, especially against heavier opponents, but he has the time to work on it, as the Devils won't be in a rush to get him in the lineup. And that is a pretty interesting part of the conversation, too, because when you talk about the Devils, they did add Colin Miller earlier this offseason, adding to a D-core that, despite losing out on guys like Damon Severson and Ryan Graves, you have other names like Hamilton, Siegenthaler, Brendan Smith is in there, Marino, Kevin Ball, too, not to mention Luke Hughes. Add to this Miller and Nemec, and you have yourselves a D-core that is already pretty full. And so with the way Nemec played last season, it's very fair to assume that he could just start out the year with Utica once more. He could play a lot more, and he has a bigger role. He could improve significantly from his last season. And once some of the Devils get injured or whatever, you could see yourselves a call-up option in Nemec to give him that cup of coffee in the NHL. The luxury here with the Devils is that they don't need to rush him. Even with Luke Hughes, they don't need to rush him either. It's just he already proved at the end of last season that he is so good that he probably does belong on an NHL roster. Nemec has not done that just yet, but it's okay because he's only 18, 19 years old. There is no reason to go out there and project Nemec as a bona fide 82-game NHL player right now. He is fine where he is. And besides, defensemen normally take a lot longer to develop anyway. You don't usually get the Rasmus Dahlins who have immediate success in the NHL at 18 years old. Even Owen Power took an extra year before coming to the NHL full-time. Nemec is in a good spot here, because all he needs to focus on is development. All he needs to focus on is playing where he's played and growing at lower levels of play before being given the keys to the car in New Jersey, because he doesn't need to be given those keys yet. Once he does make his debut, though, once he does play, we're looking at a really nice puck-moving defenseman. Solid two-way ability. Of course, there's room for growth there, but for his age, he definitely is above others. And there could be a very good offensive ceiling here to bounce off of Luke Hughes and Jack Hughes once Nemec is a top-line power play guy, for example. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case long-term. If Nemec becomes the first-pairing defenseman he is, and Luke Hughes is also that too, what do you do on the power play? Do you go one defenseman, two defensemen? Do you hold back on one of the other players like Broad or Meyer? Because you have to have Jack Hughes in your first power play, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How exactly is Simon Nemec's future going to pan out in New Jersey? As well, how do you feel about the way he developed from last year to now? It's a pretty vanilla story, honestly. Like, there isn't really too many hiccups in the road here that we have seen with Nemec, but for a second overall pick, you could definitely say the less hiccups, the better. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Simon Nemec 1 year after he was drafted second overall. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.